All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into a pretty fascinating spot in California,
Yeah,
Pacheco Pass.
Pacheco Pass.
You sent over some sources about it, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was there. I
Mm-hmm.
knew it was a route over to the Central Valley and everything, but I didn't
Yeah.
really realize how historically significant it was, and also potentially
Yeah,
how significant it's going to be in the future too.
absolutely.
That kind of lays out the basics of the geography and history and
Yeah.
all that.
It's
No?
a really interesting one, I think, just because it is such a small little geographical feature, but it really has had an outsized impact on the state's history.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it on a map,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of this little, like you said, dip in the terrain,
Uh-huh.
But for
Yeah.
whatever reason, it's like
Yeah.
the spot where everyone had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to kind of unpack here.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah,
what about this spot
right.
made it so important?
Yeah, so geographically speaking, I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking a mountain pass in the Diablo Range,
Uh-huh.
specifically in southeastern Santa Clara County,
Right.
and it separates the Santa Clara Valley from the Central Valley,
Right.
which are those two, like, dominant valleys in California.
Yeah, think about like almost all of California is dominated by those two valleys and then the mountain ranges that run between them.
Right, right,
And so if you want to get between the two of them,
right,
you got to find a pass.
right.
And so this one
Yeah.
is, a relatively low elevation.
Yeah, just over 1,300 feet,
Right.
which I guess when you think about it compared to some other passes,
Yeah.
that's not super high.
It's really not that high when you think about the Sierra Nevada
right.
and,
Yeah.
passes that go over 10,000 feet,
Yeah.
So this is pretty minimal in comparison.
Yeah. I mean, the main road that goes through there, State Route 152,
Yeah.
is 106 miles long.
It's a pretty long stretch of road.
Yeah. I mean, and it starts at Highway 1 over in Watsonville, and then it goes all the way over to Highway 99.
Right.
So it really does
Yeah.
connect those two huge parts of California.
Wow.
And that western section, that stretch that they call Pacheco Pass Road between Gilroy and the pass itself.
Yeah.
That's, about 14 miles.
Uh-huh.
And it looks like historically it's had kind of a
Yeah.
rough go of it as far as safety and stuff.
Yeah, it's had a pretty high accident rate, which is unfortunate because, it's a major thoroughfare.
Right.
And so you're getting a lot of traffic through there.
Yeah, a lot of people trying to get over to,
Yeah.
you know.
And it's a winding road, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not.
Yeah, it's not just like a straight shot.
Right. It's not a super highway or anything,
Right.
though. So, yeah.
No.
But the name itself is pretty interesting, too.
In the name.
Where does Pacheco come from?
So Pacheco Pass gets its name from Don Francisco Perez Pacheco,
Okay.
who was a California ranchero.
Uh-huh.
And he owned...
So that means that he was a rancher of, Spanish or Mexican descent
right.
in California.
And he owned a lot of the land.
And he owned a lot of land.
In that area.
In that area, yeah. And his particular rancho was called Rancho Acemas y San Felipe.
Okay, wow.
So, yeah.
So the whole area was basically his.
A lot of it was his land, yeah.
And then they named it after him later.
Uh-huh, okay.
So that's how it got its name. But there's another name that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, the sources mention that.
Yeah.
The other name.
Yeah, in the 1850s, it was known as Robbers Pass.
Robbers Pass.
Which kind of gives you an indication
Yeah, a little more.
of what it was like.
A little more Wild Westy.
A little more Wild West.
Mhm.
Yeah, so because there were a lot of holdups,
Mm.
a lot of stagecoach robberies.
So it was like a notorious
Yeah.
spot for
That
that.
was a notorious spot for that.
Yeah. And, I mean, even before it was, officially called Pacheco Pass and all that.
Right.
The sources mention that, like, the indigenous people had been using that area for a long time.
Right.
Like, there was a trail in what's now Pacheco State Park
Uh-huh.
that the Yoko's people used for trade.
Yeah, they were using it way before, the Spanish even arrived.
Right.
So that shows you how,
Right.
important of a passageway this was.
Right. So it wasn't just like the Europeans discovered it.
Right.
And it was like, oh, this is a good spot.
Exactly.
Like, people have been using this for, who knows how long.
Right.
And then when Gabriel Moraga, that Spanish army officer, came
Yeah.
through in 1805,
Mm-hmm.
did it, like, immediately become, like, a key route for them, or did it take time?
Well, it sounds like it was used by, the Spanish military and then also the Mexican military
Right.
to get over into the San Joaquin Valley.
Okay. So they definitely saw
Yeah.
it's important.
They saw its importance and, it was relatively easy way
Right.
to get through the mountains.
And then the Native Americans were also using it
Yeah.
in kind of a different way.
Yeah, for raiding.
Yeah, they were using it for raiding the missions and ranchos, for horses and cattle.
So it was kind of
I was like
a back and forth,
yeah, it was like
a contested
space in a way.
Yeah, a little more Wild West kind of feel.
Absolutely.
Back then.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the gold rush happens.
Yeah.
And it suddenly
It blew up.
Yeah, this pass becomes super important.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Well, because you had so many people coming from the Santa Clara Valley, which was already pretty populated, and they're all trying to get to the gold fields, which are in the, foothills of the Sierra Nevada, in the San Joaquin Valley.
So this was like the
major artery,
the quickest way to get over there,
the most direct route,
and the lowest, in terms of elevation, to get through those mountains.
It wasn't a cakewalk, though, right?
No, it was pretty rough going, especially on the eastern side.
Yeah, that eastern trail was really steep and rough. So, I mean, I imagine, it was tough to get wagons and stuff through there.
So, I mean, you could do it with pack animals and stuff, but if you wanted to bring any kind of heavy equipment or supplies, it was really difficult.
So then they built that wagon road in 1857.
Yeah, Andrew D. Firebaugh built that.
Right.
And that really opened it up.
Yeah, that made it a lot.
To more traffic.
But more accessible for people and goods. And then on top of that, it becomes a stop on the Butterfield Overland Mail.
The Butterfield Overland Mail.
Which was like a huge deal.
Yeah, that was a massive deal.
For connecting the East Coast and California.
It was a, stagecoach route.
Right.
That was, connecting St. Louis all the way to San Francisco.
Yeah, and I mean, for that to be like a designated stop on that route.
Really says something.
Yeah.
It
really shows how important
it was.
It had become.
As a transportation route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even today, I mean, there aren't really any major communities right on the pass itself. I mean, it's Gilroy on the west.
Right.
And Los Baños on the east. But in between, it's really just...
Yeah, it's pretty much just the road.
Yeah. It's
a few landmarks.
A route between the two.
Yeah.
So it's still primarily serving that same purpose,
It's a connector.
Yeah. It's still just a way to get between these two places.
Exactly.
And if you head south from the pass... the next major crossing of the Diablo Range is 75 miles away.
That's a long way.
So it really shows how kind of isolated this part of the range is.
It really emphasizes how crucial Pacheco Pass is as a north-south.
This is the only way to get through this part.
Significant distance.
Yeah. And then, to the north, you got SR 130, which goes over Mount Hamilton. But that's not as heavily used as further north, where you got Altamont Pass.
Right.
Which is obviously a huge thoroughfare.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of in this sweet spot.
Yeah, it's in a really geographically strategic location.
So even though there aren't any major towns right there on the pass, there are some
interesting landmarks.
Some landmarks and stuff
that have popped up.
Like Casa de Fruta.
Casa de Fruta.
That's become a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it started as just a little fruit stand.
Yeah.
On the side of the road.
Right.
And now it's this huge complex.
They got a restaurant, a deli, and a gas station. And
the gas station and RV hookups. It's a whole...
That's a destination
in itself. And, of course, it hosts the Northern California Renaissance Fair.
The Renaissance Fair, yeah.
Yeah, so it's got this kind of...
cultural element.
Brings a whole other element into it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
And then there's Bell Station, too.
Bell Station, which is a little bit...
Which is much smaller.
Yeah, more low-key.
Yeah, more of a kind of rural... local place.
Yeah, just kind of in between.
Yeah, between Casa de Fruta.
Casa de Fruta.
And the pass itself.
Yeah. And then on the east side,
once you get over the pass. You
got the San Luis Reservoir.
San Luis Reservoir, which is
huge.
Yeah, that's a massive.
The massive reservoir. Yeah. It's part of the Central Valley Project.
And the California State Water Project.
So it's a really important part of California's water infrastructure.
It's a really important part of, supplying water to the whole state.
For agriculture and everything. And it's also got that Ginelli power plant there.
Right. So they're
generating
electricity from that water as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a multi-purpose area.
Multi-purpose.
And then you got Pacheco State Park.
Right, which is just south.
Which is on the south side of the pass.
And that's more of a natural area, right?
Yeah, for hiking.
Yeah.
And enjoying the
scenery.
The natural beauty.
The natural beauty, yeah.
And then there's even a wind farm up there.
Yeah. Near the top of the pass.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And they're actually in the process of like...
Yeah, they're repowering it with bigger turbines.
Yeah.
And adding battery storage.
Yeah, which is a
pretty
big upgrade. Yeah.
Pretty big upgrade.
So it's interesting to see how that area is being used.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it's evolving.
Right. For that.
Yeah, and it really shows California's,
right,
commitment to
the renewable energy.
Yeah. And also...
And I guess reliable
energy.
Energy grid.
Right.
So the battery storage is a big part of that.
Exactly.
And then for wine lovers...
Right.
There's the Pacheco Pass American Viticultural Area.
Yeah, the AVA.
Which is kind of a mouthful, but it means that...
It means that the area is particularly well-suited for growing...
For growing grapes. For wine.
Right.
So
it's got, that going for it, too.
Yeah, it's just interesting how, like, this one little area has so many different things going on. But the biggest thing that's going to be happening there is the high-speed rail.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be...
That's going to be huge.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge game changer.
For that area.
I mean...
For this state.
Yeah, it's going to go right through Pacheco Pass.
Yeah.
And, I mean, obviously that's like...
It's the most direct route.
The most direct route.
Right.
But were there other reasons why they chose that specific?
Yeah, I mean, there are always a lot of factors that go into deciding where to put...
Like the geology of the area and like...
The environmental
impacts.
No. And, I mean, obviously you got to think about the cost, too.
Right.
I mean, tunneling is not cheap.
No. And they're going to have to build those Pacheco Pass tunnels, which are going to be like...
13 miles long.
13 miles long.
They're going to be...
I mean, that's going to be...
The longest rail tunnels in North America.
I mean, that's...
Yeah. So it's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, so...
But, it shows how important...
Yeah, it's going to change as a connection point.
Yeah, it's going to change the whole area.
And I think it's interesting that
we're so
reliant by geography.
We have,
all this technology.
We can tunnel through mountains now.
Right.
But we're still like...
But it still makes sense.
We got to go through here.
To go through the path of least resistance.
Yeah, this is
still
the best
little pass to get through.
Yeah.
And then just to kind of wrap things up here.
Yeah.
Pacheco Pass is also recognized as like an official California historical landmark.
Yeah, California Historical Landmark number 829.
Which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's really cool too.
It just shows how much it's been a part of the state's history.
All the factors.
Right, from the beginning.
That we've been talking about.
To now, and then potentially into the future as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, for you, the listener, I mean, we talked about all this stuff about Pacheco Pass, and I mean, hopefully you can see that it's way more than just like a low point in the mountains.
Right.
It's like this...
It really is a thread.
A crucial part of California's history.
That runs through the...
Yeah, I mean, from indigenous people using it for trade to the stagecoaches and the Robbers Pass era to the gold rush. Yeah. And then now, with the high-speed rail...
And the future?
I mean, it's really been there for...
It's a great example of how... geography can shape.
It's amazing how this one spot has had such a
huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one thing to think about.
I mean, we've talked about the high-speed rail, which is obviously a massive project.
A huge undertaking.
But what other historical routes might be on the cusp of
transformed in the future? Transformed in a similar way.
Yeah.
I mean, as our technology changes, how are we going to, adapt?
Adapt and change the landscape to meet our needs.
Yeah, that's a great question.
So, yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us. On this deep dive. Into Pacheco Pass.
We'll see you next time.